customary move of grinding myself into dirt, which is something I would do every year, not on purpose. This is just what happened. And so I ended up getting sick to the point that I needed to be in the hospital. The 2019 was just a crazy year. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So the end of the year, I was running Genghis Khan. It was huge. It was ridiculous. Holidays came, and I had been traveling a lot, and I just something that happens when you're paralyzed, you develop sometimes you get pressure wounds, which are just you can't feel your ass. When you're sitting on your ass, you end up with these wounds. So usually I can handle them. I can get them to heal on their own, but that year I had just worked myself down to nothing and ended up with two, one on either side of my keister, and both, they were pretty bad. I couldn't get them no matter what I did. So I knew I made this appointment with the doctor, and I went, and I just had this feeling, I'm like, I am so screwed that I'm going to be admitted. So I grabbed this giant 800-page book on the way out the door, my laptop, my iPad, and just basically planned to be in the hospital, And so that was great, because then I did get admitted, and I ended up at Metro for a week, and then the prognosis was bad enough that they were like, yeah, you need to be on bed rest for for 2 months. So I spent January, February of 2020 in the hospital at a skilled nursing facility right next to Metro Health. I don't know if it's still there. It was called Prentice, and so that's where they put you when you don't need to be in the hospital, but you can't go home. They put you in what is ostensibly a nursing home, and the difference is that it's not quite as intense. Like the nurses, they'll take care of you, but it's not like you don't see a doctor every day, that kind of thing. You're just being taken care of. So when I got there, my room was empty. And so I was like, oh, I don't have a roommate. This is great. But that night, the guy who was in the room before me came back, because he had just been in the hospital too. And they shipped him back to Prentice and brought him in his room. And he took, my hospital stay philosophy is to never turn the TV on, because that's just a trap that rots your brain. It just ruins your life. I mean, it's already really miserable being in the hospital, but then having a television on, so I bring as much as I can to read, and then that's all I'll do is read on bed rest, and that's my that's how I survive it, this guy comes back to the room at 10 o'clock at night, and he immediately turns the TV on, full blast. And I was like, man, this is gonna suck. It's 10, I'm exhausted, I want to sleep, but it's I can hear it, and it's about a really obscure Superman comic time, like a period in comics where there were two Supermen, and they were made of electricity, and one was blue and one was red. It was the 90s, and I knew all about it. I was like, what the hell is he watching? And that show ends, and then another one starts, and it's about various episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is there a nerd channel on a television I don't know about? Or what the hell is he watching? And who is it? Do I know this guy? But it just goes one after another. And it's I realize, shit, he has a tablet and he's just watching YouTube videos one after another. He is in the rabbit hole, fucking downward spiral of YouTube nerd culture. Because all the videos are it's, you've seen these videos, right? Where it's a nerd yelling at the viewer or to another nerd or whatever. And they're all just these, one more esoteric than the next. And they're about the top 10 most convoluted X-Men time travel storylines throughout whatever, or, the wackiest human secondary characters of the Godzilla movies in the Showa era or whatever. They're just like nerd shit, right? And I'm it's so loud and I can't sleep and I'm just like, what the hell? I started to interpret it as this is punishment. This is me being punished for entirely wasting my youth learning about all this fucking nerd shit that I knew everything about. I could have made these videos. I was just like, what in the hell did I do? I wasted my life. And here and it's being repeated back to me in the middle of the night at this nursing home where I can't think anymore because this guy in this room, and Prentice has these nicer rooms where there's actually like a wall between you and your roommate, but it's still just curtains, so it's like a triangle shape kind of, you know. And I thought about like yelling at this guy, you know. I thought about saying, like, guy, just turn that off or turn it down or just go to sleep, you know. But I didn't. I just kept my mouth shut because, you know, it's the first night. I don't know this dude. I don't know his situation, you know. And I eventually fell asleep. But he probably watched those videos all night because when I woke up at like 5 in the morning or so, they were still going, or they had started again, and they were very loud, and it was one nerd thing after another. You know, Star Trek and Star Wars and Marvel and DC and could the Hulk beat Superman and all this other shit, and I just was like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to like listen to this for how long? Is this gonna be months? And I really considered, like, I could totally just tell this guy to turn off his nerd shit, you know. But I thought about, because I had my bag with me, and I had my iPad, and I had my laptop, and I had the books I brought to read when I knew that I was going to be screwed to the wall. So I looked in one of the like extra pouches in my bag, and my earbuds were in there. And I thought, shit, I am saved. So I plug in the earbuds, I put them in, and I pull up the white noise app on my phone, and I can read because I can listen to thunderstorms all day and like listen to the white noise app. Do you guys ever fuck with this thing? It's like I put on the airplane sound and I fall asleep within like 5 minutes. It's amazing. So anyway, and it's in your ear. So like no one else can hear you. You can't hear anything else. So it was the best solution. I was like, oh, I'm saved. I can I don't have to hear about, you know, any of this nerd stuff. Or the other main reason why I didn't want to say anything is the unspoken, unwritten, like, hospital roommate protocol where you're sharing a room with another person and you're both basically having the worst times in your life. And so you pretend like you can't hear or see or smell any of the things that are happening on the other side of the curtain. You're giving that person the dignity of ignoring them, and they're doing it hopefully for you, you know. So that was the other main, like, I didn't want to yell at this guy because I didn't want to acknowledge that I could hear his YouTube videos, and I was being silent because I was reading and I had earbuds. So like that was, you know, but I knew that nurses were coming in, taking care of me, changing dressings and doing whatever, and there was all kinds of other, you know, paralyzed people stuff going on my side of the room. So I didn't want to upset the tenuous like system that we have, you know. So that was the other big reason why I didn't say anything. And so this goes on for like weeks, you know. I'm reading books and he's watching YouTubes, but this guy is incredibly sick. Through context and just like talking to him a little bit here and there over the curtain, you know. I found out his name is Derek Jackson, and I knew that he was a giant ass nerd. And he was like I think he had just turned 50, and he was a black nerd, you know. So we got along pretty well. He had diabetes and heart disease, and he had pneumonia, and he had a really bad urinary tract infection from kidney stones. I'm breaking HIPAA rules like you wouldn't know, and he had been in the hospital for months because he had both of his legs amputated below the knee. So he was just like the sickest dude. So he was coughing and barfing and like shitting everywhere, and it was just a bad scene. And again, I'm pretending like I don't. I mean, as far as I know, this guy's just some nerd that's hanging out with me, you know? And I was really tempted one time to talk to him because he had a visitor that came in, and they were talking about Fishbone for like half an hour. And I was like, oh man, should I start talking about Fishbone over the curtain? But then he'll know, he'll acknowledge that I'm farting over here, whatever, you know? And I'm like, I can't. I gotta keep the peace, you know? And so over time, you know, he seemed to be getting better. He was cracking jokes about the prosthesis, like the prosthetic guys came in and measured his legs, and they were talking to him about his rehab, and he had been going down the hall to the physical therapy gym, and at that point I was still just on bed rest, so I was laying in there reading books all day, every day, 24 hours a day. I got way into these really long, epic fantasy novels by this guy, Patrick Rothfuss. They're like 1,000 pages long, and I would just read them. I would just start reading them, and like sleep for 10 minutes at a time in between reading. Like, I was deep into it, right? So, probably about 5 weeks into that, one night, you know, when you're in the hospital and you're doing that, you're just like living. Well, I don't know, whether we're watching TV or whatever you're doing, if you're on bed rest, time becomes really fluid and weird. And so the only real like metronome of existence is mealtime, especially at a nursing home or like a skilled nursing facility where they're understaffed and they've got way too many patients. So all of a sudden, 7:30-ish, you get breakfast, and you're like, oh, it's 7:30 in the morning. 12:30, 11:30, 12, you get lunch. It's around lunchtime. At 5 o'clock, you get dinner, and that's really consistent. Because when they're short-staffed, you don't know when you'll get your meds or when their dressing will be changed. As long as it happens on the nurse's shift, it gets done. But again, it doesn't feel like it. Time moves weird, right? So after a long time being in that room with that guy, with Derek Jackson, I one night I heard like the dinner came 5 o'clock. I mean, I take my earbuds out and I'm gonna eat dinner. I sit up, and I hear his call bell. When you're in the hospital, you have like a little call bell that's attached to a wire that's attached to the wall. And when you need help, you push the button, and someone on a PA somewhere says, "What the hell do you want?" And you say, "I need this, that, and the other, whatever." And someone will come eventually. But I heard his hit the floor, and so then I heard him say, "I need help," And it was pretty strange. This is not an uncommon thing to happen in our room. This guy was so sick, a lot of times he just couldn't reach it, couldn't find it, or he dropped it. And so I would call the nurse station and say, "Hey, Derek Jackson needs some help," And so I hit the bell. Probably 2-3 minutes later, on the PA, the attendant at the desk asked what I needed. And I said, "Oh, I'm fine, but Jackson dropped his call bell. He needs some help. If you could send someone in." And I finished eating dinner, put the earbuds back in, listened to the thunderstorm, and I was reading this novella called The Slow Regard of Silent Things. That's like an ancillary story to Patrick Rothfuss, like King Killer Chronicles. It's like, again, I'm doing my own deep nerd shit on my side of the curtain. So, I kind of forgot about what had happened, that he had called and no one ever came. And so the nurse's aide comes in, like maybe 10 minutes later, and because then it's time to clear the dinner trays and put them back on the cart. And she also was very concerned about refilling everyone's pitchers of water with ice water, because that was like, I don't know, it's like a crucial part of being in the hospital. You need ice water on your little tray. So she comes in and said, "Hey, you want some ice water?" I'm like, "Sure." And then while she's filling mine up, she says, "Jackson, you want some ice water?" And he doesn't respond. And she says, "Jackson, do you want some ice water?" And there's no response. So she says, "Jackson." And then I could see her go behind his skirt. She's like, "Jackson." And then she just, "Jackson!" And then she runs out of the room. And like 2 seconds later, a nurse comes like barreling in the room and hits the button on the wall and is yelling at this guy. You know, she's yelling in his face. And I can hear her, the level of urgency and just, I don't even know, like stress, I guess, of this woman's voice. And these nurses were amazing. She couldn't wake him up, you know. And when the person at the desk answers her call, she says, "Call 911, Jackson's coding." And so she starts CPR. And within probably another 10 minutes, like, paramedics are bursting through the door. The curtain's flying open. There's probably 11 people in this room between the nurses and the nurse's aide and these paramedics, and they bring out the big guns. They got the defibrillators, and I hear them. I can hear them say, "Clear," shock this guy, trying to revive him. And that was it. He was dead. So they put him in a bag and put him on a gurney and wheeled him away. And that was it. And one of the paramedics peeks through the curtain and comes over and like, "Hey, you doing okay in here?" And I was like, just laying there with, I didn't know. I didn't know if I was like, "No, I'm not okay. What the hell?" You know? Like, there's nothing I can do. I can't read this book now. I can't do I have to just lay here silently thinking at all now, you know, because that was it. And I had been in the room when people had died before. Another hospital roommate was this ancient man who was very old, and so he was ready to go. Like, he told his son, like, "Let me die," and the guy died. I mean, he knew. He was like 95 years old, whatever. That's not a surprise. I'd been in the intensive care unit, and when you're in the intensive care unit, you're already like over you're approximate to the abyss, right? So I've been there before, but I don't know. I have thought about this guy almost every day since this happened, and yeah, it was an intense experience, but one of the things I've thought of is that I am so glad I did not tell him to shut up and turn off his nerdy YouTube videos, because if watching an endless stream of the dorkiest, most obscure nerd culture for the last few weeks of his life made him happy and brought him a little bit of joy before, you know, getting taken out that door, then I'm so glad I stayed on my side of the curtain and pretended I couldn't hear it, you know. So the only other thing I want to say about this is, like, less than an hour later, I think, the nurse had to come in and like give me an IV treatment and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, so are you okay? And she's like, no, that was bad. I'm like, so are you gonna get to go home or something? And she's like, are you out of your, no, I'm a nurse. I am here. I have to work a double. Like, you know, are you out of your mind? I was like, did they have like trauma coaches or something? And she no, that was it. She was just there to do her job. And I couldn't believe it. But I mean, I do believe it, because then I got released from the hospital, or from that place, and I went home. And 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So, you know, that was 2020 for me. So, thank you for listening. I thought you had a question or something.